Good morning and welcome to the EPALE Discussion News Media Literacy for Adults. Why is it important right now? My name is Ruth Baptiste. I'm from European Schoolnet. I have the pleasure to be here today with Heini Houtinen. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Hi, Heini. Good morning. Heini is a communication specialist at the KVS Foundation and editor-in-chief of Elm Magazine. Heini has a background working as a journalist and with communications in the NGO sector. At KVS, she edits the free online magazine, on lifelong learning. Elm and is involved also in designing and running media literacy projects for adults, which is why we invited her to talk to us today. Good morning, Heini, again.
Good
How are
morning.
you? You good
I'm good,
today?
thank you. Nice to be
Wonderful.
here.
Well, Heini, so thank you for accepting our invitation, right?
Of course, and maybe I should just mention at this point, because obviously, originally I was supposed to be here with my colleague Anne
Yes.
Tassila, who's also very much involved in running media literacy projects for adults at KVS Foundation. She could unfortunately not be here in person, but just wanted to mention that we've kind of very much created like the OER article that was published in preparation for this, and also the points that we will be discussing today very much as teamwork. And Anne has also done a little video that I think we will share a clip from that with some points about the projects that she's been working on.
Wonderful. Yes, and I immediately invite everyone that is watching this streaming to also read the article that Heini and Hannah wrote, and also the infographic, and take the quiz that is there. It is available since Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Well, Heini, sorry. um, let's start our discussion. So on this topic, on this very, very important topic today, maybe we could start with the very general questions. A question: what is news literacy for adults, in your opinion?
Sure, thank you. Well, maybe a sort of like a context for that question. I could maybe say a few words about why we wanted to discuss specifically news literacy and how we understand it. Obviously, media literacy and media literacy for adults is such a big concept. It's sort of an umbrella term, I think, for very different skills. So that's why we wanted to narrow it down a little bit, because I think in our experience, and also based on the studies that we've looked at, I think one sort of challenge with media literacy is that people can talk about quite different things when they talk about media literacy. I think there are lots of definitions probably for media literacy, but like one definition that we used by the EU Media Literacy Expert Group defines media literacy as all technical, cognitive, social, civic, and creative capacities that allow citizens to access, have a critical understanding of the media, and interact with it. So I think that just illustrates how big the concept is. So obviously that includes very, very different things, but because we wanted to sort of talk about something that I guess we feel is very topical right now and is very important for adults. But this is also maybe the sort of news literacy side and focusing on journalism. That's sort of where our core expertise is, and that's kind of the focus of many of our projects. But I guess, and again, like news literacy, I'm not sure if there's like a definite definition for it, but the way we understand it and what we kind of want to talk about, I guess, is the ability to just access credible information, but then also and sort of evaluate the credibility of information. I think the sort of credibility of information, news, and other type of content that we encounter online, like that's the one key aspect of news literacy. But I think it's also about identifying different types of information. So like in the context of journalism, for example, it maybe sounds very obvious, but I think it's not always that simple. And there are a lot of adults who might struggle to maybe differentiate between a news piece, for example, and an opinion piece, which, operate completely with different rules. And I think those lines can become quite blurry, especially in the digital era. But then I think the wider context of why news literacy and what it sort of means, I think, is, you need these skills to kind of, I guess, as a person, as a citizen, to understand the importance of news and understand the importance of independent journalism, of credible news sources in our society, and how important they are just for functioning democracy, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Heini, you've been mentioning actually certain terms like digital era, digital world, and we understand that what you're saying it's crucial for the times we're living in. But maybe can you detail a little bit more? Why is this important in this time that we are living in? Why is this so important to have news literacy for adults?
Sure. So I think that it's very important for several reasons right now. I mean, I guess there probably hasn't been a time that it would not have been important. But obviously, like I already mentioned, the digital era, the digital world that we're living in, I think that's something that, everyone is very aware of it. We've been talking about it for a while, but I think digitalization and social media platforms in specific, they are changing the way we not just consume, but the way we produce information in very big ways. So I think that is maybe the most important reason. And of course, like just the fact that online and internet, anyone can publish information very easily. First of all, it just sort of exploded the amount of information that is available to us and that we encounter on a daily basis. And then, of course, that raises really important questions about well, do we have the skills needed to critically evaluate this information that we encounter? And of course, also online environments mean that misinformation and disinformation can spread wider and faster than ever before. And I think we all know that is a real issue nowadays.
Actually, Heini, sorry to interrupt you, but actually there's a comment from Linda. And this comment says, recognizing fake news is becoming increasingly important in everyday life. What would be the main criteria features features of recognizing fake news? I think this actually connects very well with what you are just saying.
Sure.
How can we recognize fake news? Maybe some tips, and then also highlighting why is this so important, this skill so important right now.
Thank you, Linda. That's a really good question, and I think that's a difficult question in a way. I think in some way there are really simple rules, I guess, for recognizing fake news, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it's something that we should all think about. I think one thing to think about or to recognize maybe is that I think research shows, talking to some researchers as part of the OER article, for example, the fake news are becoming more and more sophisticated. So I think it's also maybe the first step is to recognize and to sort of understand that I think we as adults often tend to think that we would spot fake news. And I think we kind of have to give up on that idea. I think we are all very likely to believe information that we want to believe. So I think fake news can look really real. I think if they are in line with our views and they say what we want to believe, it's very easy to believe them. So I think one step is to also, I guess, to look at beliefs and to look at your views and sort of think about why is it that you want to believe certain types of information. But then of course there are very simple questions and checklists, I think, that everyone should go through when they do encounter information online. So who wrote this? Why did they write this? What are the sort of reasons behind this. For example, like if someone's claiming something and they have an economical gain in it, you know, that should obviously like sort of make you critical towards their claim in one way. And also very basic things I think in online environments still are still applicable. So, you know, what are the sources that the person making certain claims or a news piece making certain claims are using? What are the sources, and what are the reasonings and arguments, and do they, you know, do they make sense?
Yeah.
I think some very simple questions are a good starting point in that.
Yeah. Well, that actually takes me to another point that I wanted to make. It's very connected, that news literacy and democracy go hand in hand, right? So citizenship, democracy, they go hand in hand, correct? Would you
Yeah,
agree?
very, very much so. I guess media literacy and democracy go hand in hand, but I feel that specifically news literacy and democracy go hand in hand. And you know, I think it's probably quite obvious, but I think it's still a very important thing, and it's worth highlighting again and again. I think on the most basic level, I guess. Democracy and news literacy are connected because for democracy, for, you know, active citizenship, we as adults, we need to understand what is going on around us, and, you know, in order to do that, you know, aside like our immediate surroundings, we need to have access to credible information, and we need obviously the skills to critically evaluate that. So that's the most basic level, I think, really. And obviously, I think if you think about the sort of what is at stake if sort of that doesn't work, if we as adults don't have the needed news literacy skills, the spread of misinformation can have really dangerous consequences for democracy. Obviously, like just the fact that if people don't trust institutions, if people don't trust traditional news sources, that can be very difficult. But also that can have very direct consequences if people don't have the tools to make informed decisions. So, you know, that goes from voting in political elections to, you know, signing petitions, protesting, and of course, like now in the context of the current pandemic, I think, you know, it's highlighted it even more that if people don't trust the news on, you know, things related to the COVID pandemic, or if people start believing misinformation, that can have really direct impact on people's health.
Yeah. I guess you have some examples, right? That you worked with Anne on a Palestine project about that.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, Anne has prepared like a little video where she talks about some of the projects that she's been working on and the learnings from those. And we could share maybe a little clip about the project that KVS has been running in Palestine for a couple of years now, and that is very, very connected to promoting democracy through news literacy. So yeah, I think we can watch the clip together now.
Hello all. Like Heini just introduced me, my name is Anne Tastula. And sorry that I couldn't be there live today, but you will get me now in a pre-recorded format. I hope that is okay. I will now introduce a few of the media literacy projects we have done here at KVS during the past few years. And I will start with the media literacy education project we have done in Palestine starting from 2016 in 3 different projects altogether, but the content pretty much the same in all of them. So we have had 3 2-year projects. One of them is still ongoing, and we have had the same partners in all of them, 2 universities in the Palestinian area, and then us here from Finland. And in very brief, what we are trying to do, we are supporting media literacy and educating media literacy to support the civic society there in the Palestinian area. The target groups in these three projects has shifted a little bit. We have started with in the first project, we started with journalists and aspiring journalists, communication students, and then we moved on to so-called normal citizens, common citizen. And now in the third project that is ongoing at the moment, we are working with trainers and youth workers, community leaders, those who are in charge at the camps, those who work with NGOs and therefore have a little bit of a more and better contact with the youth or females who we try to reach in the project within the education of media literacy. And why have we selected Palestine? Well, there's a little, if nothing, happening in media education or media literacy education in Palestinian areas without us, so to speak. And in the curriculum, there's nothing mentioned about the media education. And especially the women and young adults, they have limited possibilities to be part and be heard and make changes in the society. And we have thought that maybe through this project, this gives one more chance for people to be heard and be able to use and consume and produce media in an ethical way and in a way that will make their case heard, so to speak. And also we give opportunities for especially women and also men as trainers in these projects after we have trained them in the TOT courses. Okay, we have had a lot of learning aims for the courses, as you can see here, but if we want to say it in short, we concentrate on both reading media critically and responsibly, and also producing the media critically and responsibly. So we concentrate on both the consuming of media, how to read it carefully and critically, and then how to be the producer of social media when you are critical and responsible. And I want to point out one outcome from this project. We started this in the first project and it came out in this first project, and a revised version, second edition, came out last year in the second project. It's an open source media guide, media literacy guide for adults and aspiring citizen journalists, or why not those who study communication or journalism as well. You can find it in the mediaguide.fi address. You can download it as a PDF format, or you can find the articles individually in both English and in Arabic language. And what have we learned working in Palestine in this kind of a little bit of a different environment on media literacy? Well, I think most of it has to do with the different culture altogether. If I compare other projects that we do here in Finland or in Europe, within Europe, so of course it's a different working culture and working environment altogether working in Palestine. So one of the learnings has been that the students have little knowledge on the journalistic conventions that how we do media in the Western worlds, and on the contrary, the other way around, then the Finnish trainers are not that familiar with the local media environment. So we have both Finnish trainers and then the local trainers working together on the courses. And of course, the culture differences come up in pedagogy and in the way people have been accustomed to learn, so to speak. And then the other part with the challenges comes from the working environment where we work. They are institutional. You know, we have had a lot of problems with the funding, being able to transfer the money due to the Israeli government, and also at the borders to get into the Palestinian areas. and this kind of problems that come not from the media education itself, but from the area that we try to run this project on. But very fruitful. I recommend the area and working in there.
That's a very interesting project, Heini. I think you mentioned several points that are crucial, and you had also other projects, right? We can see the other examples later on, correct? Can you tell us where?
Sure. So Anna will talk in more detail about 2 other projects that we've done in the past, quite different projects in the video. And I think so the whole video, we can share it as a YouTube link to the discussion later. So you can watch it and learn a bit more about the projects if you'd like. And also one of the projects that Anna talks in the video, we have also included the course outline for that course, just an example, a course structure for the OER article. So you can also have a look at that. But maybe if I can just add one point to, or continue to the points that Anna was making. Obviously, Anna was talking about a very specific context for the project in Palestine, but I think just wanted to add, I guess, to the theme of news literacy and democracy, because I think and what is also like present in the Palestine project is also the part that we don't have just experts and journalists going in and teaching people. So I think it's often collaboration, and I think the idea is that it's also very much a question of participation. How do people, and that's, I think, a key thing about news literacy, education and democracy, that adults should feel like media represents a world that they are part of, world that they recognize, because I think that's a really important factor as well, in terms of how do we make people feel like media represents them. And I don't mean that in the sense that we should report every single experience or claim, but that news should serve us citizens, and they should represent us. And media doesn't always do a perfect job in that. So I think it's also raising questions of news diversity and plurality, and sort of how could we bring more diverse viewpoints of experiences and voices into the news. I think that's just a really important aspect of democracy as well.
Well, the education plays an important role on that. And actually, there's a question, not a question, sorry, it's a comment from Ingrida that says we should promote educational ecosystems, educational communities that operate informally to increase the media competence. So maybe, Heini, what, in your opinion, would be the best methods in media literacy education practices? Do you have some more insights to give us on that?
Sure. Well, thank you, Ingrid, for the comment. Yes, I think I agree. If I understand you correctly, I think the informal aspect is really important. In our experience, I guess one thing is that we adults don't often feel that we need media literacy education, and I think sort of like very top-down teaching doesn't necessarily work. I think it's not that tempting for many adults. So yeah, I think creating informal learning environments is really important. I don't know if I have a sort of clear answer to how that would work, but I think discussion is key. What we've done in the past is bring together people to discuss sort of maybe a very topical question or issue or theme that has been covered in the news, and we could have a journalist or an expert sort of presenting that, or sort of introducing the theme, maybe explaining a bit about why it has been covered in the news in a certain way. But then there's a very important aspect of that is, I guess, making room for discussion. And I think also if we want to learn, if we want to sort of improve people's critical thinking skills, media literacy skills, I think one important aspect to think about in sort of creating these informal learning environments is how would we reach and attract people that don't think they need this type of discussion? How would we attract people that might maybe even be critical of, mainstream media? Because that's the people that we really need to reach, obviously. How would we get together people with different opinions and viewpoints? Because I think that's really when we actually learn. So yeah, maybe that would be my initial thoughts on the comment.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other thoughts on the best methods and education practices to teach media
Sure.
literacy?
Well, sure. So I think another thing, and maybe that already kind of ties into what Anna was talking about the project. I think in my mind, in our opinion, I think obviously adult education plays a really important role in teaching media literacy and maybe more specifically news literacy skills for adults. But journalism and journalists and media also play a really important role in that. So I think in our experience, one thing that works quite well is bringing those two together. So in our projects, we've often we've had journalists come in and not just teach people, like not just tell people how they do things, but explain also. Explain, of course, like how media works and like what are the principles that they use when producing news and when selecting news. But I think what that does is it increases transparency. So like and I think that's really important, especially because now I think there is quite a lot of mistrust towards news. So sort of bringing together the people who are making the news and the people who maybe want to learn more about, for example, like why would you cover a certain topic like this, or why would you not cover this topic? I think that's really fruitful. And I think one key aspect for me that I believe is that we all adults need more news literacy or media literacy skills. Like no one is really ready with that. So obviously we can identify lots of different groups, I'm sure, depending on the context and depending on the learning aims of specific target groups. But I think what we've done is also we've done projects, for example, with experts and researchers who might not be seen as the sort of critical target group maybe for news literacy skills. But what we've done, for example, is we in the past year we worked with researchers in the field of medicine and then economics, and because we had identified that those are two areas that people really need understandable information on. And I guess experts and researchers are also key players in the sense that they are often the experts interviewed in the media. So they also need more media literacy skills in terms of how to cooperate with the media, how to talk about their expertise, how to talk about their research in an understandable way. So maybe that just as a sort of example of how I think it's good to maybe sometimes expand the idea of who needs media literacy education. But yeah, I think discussion, as I already said, open discussion is a really important factor. And I think also, specifically when we talk about adults, I think being very open about the fact that we all have biases and, we all like approach this from a certain viewpoint with certain assumptions and views and beliefs. Like no one is sort of completely objective when it comes to news.
Yeah, and maybe actually this connects with one comment that we also saw from Slovakia, actually from Nepal, Slovakia, that says that elderly people are not fully skilled, and this can lead to their social exclusion or personal frustration. And I think the transparency aspect that you are just mentioning, and I think it's really crucial to avoid social exclusion on one hand, and on the other hand, personal frustration, because if they understand the environment, if they understand where the news are coming from, if they understand who's giving them the news, why is this piece of news there, I think also the personal frustration would be avoided. I don't know if you agree with me. I'm just commenting on the comment, but please feel free to add some more comments on this.
Sure. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with the comment, and I think that's a really important point to raise, and maybe that also ties into the thing that I have been thinking about a lot, I guess, which is why specifically adults need this, and obviously I think elderly people, older adults are a specific subgroup of adults, I guess. But I think the comment is absolutely right. I think there's actually quite a lot of research on that. It is more often adults, and specifically elderly people, who are more likely to share fake news than compared to young people, for example. And I think that's just one example of that shows that like why I think elderly people are a really important group, and would definitely, I mean, just speaking from the Finnish context and my experience, we would definitely need more focus on media literacy skills for elderly people. I think one important thing that I found when I was doing research for the article, we looked at the study that had been done it kind of mapped different media literacy initiatives in European countries, and sort of like talked about the best examples. And I think one thing that just really stood out for me was that I think it covered 145 case studies of media literacy initiatives, and only 7 of them targeted elderly people. So I think that in one maybe just raises questions of, how could we support elderly people more? And then, of course, I think that's also maybe a slightly more complicated question, because I think what is obviously really important is providing quite technical, basic media literacy, tools and support for elderly people, because, I think it's a fact that many older people struggle with just, accessing platforms or tools that are used nowadays. And that's, of course, like a very urgent challenge. But at least in Finland, I think, I was talking to a researcher recently who specializes in media skills and media lives of elderly people, and she was saying that there's some work being done in Finland that addresses these sort of basic technical skills, media skills for elderly people, but she very much felt like there is a big gap in addressing like more critical thinking skills for elderly people, and sort of looking at, well, how do senior citizens or people that are retired, like how do they consume the news, for example? Like they listen to the radio a lot. Should we maybe think about that more? Like how can we make sure that they get the news and the information that they need? And also the question of that I raised earlier, the question of representation and participation. I think there's been research done into how elderly people feel like they're very much in the margins in the mainstream media. They don't feel like their voices and experiences are heard. And I think that's a really important question, an interesting question as well. How could we address that better?
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Heini. And unfortunately, we are reaching our time, so we will have to close soon. But actually, I would like to mention that Heini and myself will be moderating the discussion during the day. So we invite you, all the participants that are listening, to continue the discussion on the discussion page. But before we go, we would actually like to launch two questions for you, and also to invite you to be with us at the wrap up of this discussion later today and I'm checking, yes, at 4 p.m. Central European Time. And we will be here to continue the discussion and to close this discussion. I mean, there's a lot of questions that were raised by Heini and also some of you that are still up in the air. And one of them actually comes from Ariana, and we would like to invite you to try to answer this question a little bit on the forum. How can we access, search, critically use and contribute content wisely, both online and offline? We will maybe start our wrap up with this question, Heini, and let's see what the other participants and users tells us on the forum. But I guess you also have a question for our users, right, Heini?
Well, yes. I mean, I think I probably would have many questions, but I would very much want to hear from you. Obviously, my experience is very much in the Finnish context, and what is being done and what is not being done here. So, I would very much want to hear your case studies or examples of how is media literacy, maybe even more specifically news literacy, how is that being taught to adults, or in your country, do you have examples of initiatives or tools that have been working really well? I would be very interested in hearing about them.
That would be great. Yes, if we could share some examples. Thank you so much, Heini. I guess we will continue this conversation later on today. And for now, we say goodbye, but see you soon. See you later today. And let's continue the discussion in the discussion page.
Thank you for this. See you soon.